O Lord of hosts, be with us, for we have none other help in times of adversity but thee. O Lord of hosts, have mercy on us.
I want to make a thesis tonight that what we're seeing is actually the public sphere becoming, in a way, our insane asylums. That when we look at the homelessness crisis, we look at the mental health crisis in our society, we look at the drug addiction, we look at the filth of the inner cities, that I think it's hard not to notice a precipitous decline in American society in relationship to this sort of movement to kind of soften the edges of mental illness and how we treated it. Now, I understand, again, doing some of the research, that mental institutes weren't exactly the most wonderful place to be, historically speaking. But um, one of the things that I also discovered in research is that mental illness can be contagious. And I do have a medical paper to actually talk to you and show you this, that they have found that, interestingly enough, things like happiness are not contagious. So if you're happy and you're around happy people, that doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be happy. However, what they have found is that depression, anxiety, these sort of more negative states associated with mental health, in fact, are contagious. And they did this during a study, or at least the paper that I was going to show you guys has to do with like college dorms and looking at what they considered mental health as being a real contagion. And so I want to tie a few things together tonight. One, that mental illness, in fact, is contagious. Another one is that America is witnessing the largest mental health crisis in its history, and that deinstitutionalization has been an absolute disaster, and that we are also witnessing a mass psychosis that is being facilitated through the internet and social media. So on a fun note, I have some ridiculous videos to show you from TikTokers, like a girl dressed up like a pig, filling her bathroom full of dirt and rolling around in it, furries, uh, various aspects of people with gender dysphoria, and how this is, again, being spread through the internet. I've talked about before that Gen Z has a 1 in 4 relationship to those who identify as LGBTQ, 25% of that generation. So I want to talk a little bit about this, and then we're going to I got tons of papers and we got some fun videos to watch. So smash that like for everybody who's here. I appreciate you guys joining me on this Friday night. Thank you very, very much. And so mental health and mental illness, in fact, is contagious. There is real evidence for this to various degrees. And so recent medical studies have shown that mental illness can, in fact, be contagious, and it's similar to a virus. Interesting. Very interesting. And happiness, as I said, is not contagious, but these more negative effects are. I began to then look into, insanity. The title is Insane Asylums. And insanity, or sanity, or being sane, actually comes from the Latin word sanus, which had to do with health. And throughout tradition, those who were characterized as insane, or those who were sane, means they had a healthy mind in a healthy body. And so sanity and insanity has to do with a sort of problematic feature with the mind and its ability to reason, its ability to understand reality, its ability to understand the actual threats. And that's interesting because mental illness is not necessarily associated with a structural deficiency in the brain. It has to do with the mind. Now, of course, because we live in a sort of materialistic, secular, atheist world, people have speculated that the mind is just an emergent phenomenon of brain activity and brain connection, and therefore they don't really give a lot of credence to the idea of a mind or a sort of spiritual dimension to all this stuff. But I think there's absolutely a spiritual dimension of this, because there's multiple cases of when somebody does become insane, their mind becomes unhealthy, that will then become detrimental to their bodily functions and their body itself. Sometimes there leads into self-harm. You start looking at things that people are doing. We've seen, again, aspects of the sort of radicalization through the transgender movement. And it seems, wow, that's really interesting, right? Because psychosis has to do with the inability to actually perceive reality and, in fact, live more inside a fantasy within the deficiencies of the mind. That's really interesting. And so, as an Orthodox Christian, we have a spiritual understanding of the logismy, right? That the demons and demonic activity is actually taking place most pointedly in the imagination. This is a point of contact. This is something we have to watch ourselves. This is why prayer and controlling our mental images, controlling our thoughts is essential to our spiritual health. Now, we look at our society and the proliferation of pornography, um, violent movies, and degenerate entertainment around our societies. And it's like, wow, is this an opening for spiritual problems? I would speculate that absolutely is. And I have an article that we're not going to read it. I have it. I did a video on it, I think last year on my members channel for the $5 a month website members, talking about the relationship between insanity and demonic possession and patristic thought. Now, these were two separate things. However, they do overlap because demonic possession does lead people to insane behavior. And from an Orthodox perspective, that makes sense because it's through the mind in which the demons, these noetic entities, are able to contact you and influence you. So, in relation to all this, we're seeing in America the largest mental health crisis ever. And I have multiple articles highlighting this. We're seeing the use of SSRIs, psychiatric drugs, and various forms of depression absolutely skyrocketing to levels never seen before. And the pandemic, or the plandemic, hasn't helped at all. I have an article talking about a significant rise in the cases of psychosis within England post 2020. So we look at things that are happening in the Western world, although my conversation today is really going to be oriented around America, but I think they can be extrapolated to look at generally the Western world that has bought into many of these sort of these Western liberal societies and these progressive movements. So when we're thinking about psychosis and the inability of people to actually perceive reality, but instead are operating and existing within a self-perceived fantasy, it's hard not to associate this with videos that we're going to see with people such as furries, who we are seeing now people identifying as cats, as dogs, as various animals. We're seeing sexual fetishes tied to this thing. We're seeing gender dysphoria. And I would say this is a form, I know it's uncommon, but gender dysphoria historically was a mental illness. And it was a sort of psychosis and the inability to perceive one's reality, meaning what sex and therefore gender you are. So I have an article and related to this of academics actually arguing for zoophilia. Yes, arguing for the acceptance of bestiality. Now you say, well, what does that have to do with mental illness? Well, I think it's a significant in relationship to mental illness, because what it has to do with is an inability to understand correct sexual actions. The idea that animals can consent to sex and all this different stuff is absolutely insane. Insane. We saw in Mississippi, I don't know if I talked about this previously. I actually showed this in a stream a long time ago. There was a young girl. I mean, she was like 18 years old, 17 years old, and she filmed herself engaging in coitus with a dog in front of a Christian church, filmed it and put it on TikTok. That is insane. That is a form of insanity. And so the largest consumer of psychiatric drugs right now are women in America. We've talked about the Forbes article that speculates that for the first time in history, the American society is going to reach a point by 2030 where 50% of women will be single and childless into their later stages, meaning 35 plus. That's unheard of. And we're seeing the unhappiness of women at an all-time high. Right now, from the article, one of the articles we'll be seeing today is that according to a 2020 study, 1 in every 5 women are on a psychiatric drug. Now, this includes men too, because as I've talked about before, the leading cause of death among men under the age of 45 is suicide, killing themselves. That's unreal. That's a form of insanity. That's certainly related to demonic activity. And so you can't help but think that the collapsing of the nuclear family, the loss of traditional values, the loss of any sort of transcendent orientation, i.e., Christianity or religion, generally speaking, is aiding and abetting in a major mental crisis in the Western world. And in fact, I want to highlight here that I believe America is, in fact, if we're going to sort of anthropomorphize nation states, it is completely self-destructive. I was recently watching a video from the Sean Ryan show. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he has a woman, Sarah Adams, on, and she was a CIA targeter. It's incredible two-part conversation. I highly recommend if you're able to. Shout out to Jonathan, one of our premium members, for showing me that. But in it, she highlights she was a key targeter amongst terrorists in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Middle East, generally speaking. And she talked about how the links that she would go to target various, high Al Qaeda officials, and how the United States at the highest levels was actually hindering the process. She highlighted that some of the major terrorists that she was supposed to stop, in fact, were getting visas to come to the United States and come through the southern border. That's insane. And so we look at our nation as a whole, and we're arguably led by psychopaths. And psychopathy is something where people develop narcissistic tendencies, the inability to feel emotion, the inability to empathize with other people. And it sure seems like that's who we're being led by. And this is an insane society. We're moving into pure insanity. And in fact, it is a contagion. That's what's so interesting about it. And so we, like I said, we're seeing homelessness at an all-time high. I also have an article to show you guys regarding that. And one of the articles highlights that it was like 40-some% of homeless people are clinically diagnosed with a form of mental illness. Now, it could be much higher, obviously, but that is startling. And as I said, American cities are the new insane asylums. And of course, they want you to get out of your rural or suburban lifestyle. They want us all to move into these electronic grid cities, right? These green cities, 15-minute cities. And yet I have an article specifically citing how living in cities actually increases mental illness. That it has an inverse effect in regards to personal relations with each other. Ironic, right? That the people that live rurally, the people that live further away from each other, people that live in the suburbs actually have better relationships with each other. And they tend to have an overall higher mental health. Makes sense. And so we're seeing a sort of the deinstitutionalization of mental health hospitals and facilities is leading to everything be led and put out on the street. And inner cities, we see a filthiness and a rising of crime. I just took my fiance out for a date night in Indianapolis. Now, Indianapolis isn't one of the largest cities. I think it's 10th maybe in the United States or something like that. But just then, we couldn't walk one block without a man who is clearly insane yelling at everybody while we were walking by. And it's incredible, the rate that we're seeing across our country. And so deinstitutionalization, as I'll show you guys here in a few, I believe is an absolute disaster. And many critics have highlighted where others have said deinstitutionalization hasn't gone far enough, due to the fact that we no longer have a significant amount of mental health hospitals. Majority of people who do in fact have mental illnesses are either sent to like a halfway house for a temporary period, or they're arrested. And I've seen this talking with police officers that, again, living in California, they can't do anything because what are they going to do? Put all these homeless people in prison, in jail? They don't have space for them. And so it's interesting, too, that insanity as a term has sort of fallen out of, I have an article from the American Psychiatric Association. They don't even use the term insanity anymore. And insanity is only used in a legal sense regarding somebody's ability to be guilty of a crime. So the public sphere is now an insane asylum. And when we look at social media, when we look at, again, censorship, you're not allowed to speak the truth. You're not allowed to say sane things like men and women should be together, that nuclear families are good, that strong traditional men are positive for society. These things can get you in trouble. And this is indicative of an insane society. The average IQ, I have an article on the average IQ is on the decline. This is the first time in human history. And this was a study actually also done in Norway, which is not obviously in America. And they're experiencing the same thing, that the average IQ for the first time is declining. Now, there's something called the Flynn effect, and that had to do with each generation increasing in overall IQ, which has been a historical trend since the IQ test has been established. However, since the beginning of like the mid 90s to then the 2000s, it sort of stagnated, and now it's seeing a precipitous decline in intelligence. This is all obviously constructed, and the effect of social media, I'm sure, has a major impact on this. And I have an article on social media directly highlighting that it increases things that are related to mental illness, depression, and anxiety, overall mental distress, overall fear about the world. And so psychosis is also tied with an irrational fear of threat, or an irrational fear of threat. And I can't help but think that we are living through a mass political psychosis, right? If we look at Trump derangement syndrome and all these people that, you say a halfway decent thing and you're labeled as a Nazi right now, this is a form of psychosis. The inability to actually see reality and live in a fantasy world of threats, this is psychotic behavior. And again, I'm not the biggest Trump supporter. There's a lot of things that I don't like. And I totally agree that he's a megalomaniac and he's narcissistic. He's egotistical. And he's certainly not the most erudite person we could elect for the job. However, there are benefits to him being sort of non-politically correct and of that nature. Certainly, he sort of has a masculine persona about him that still is appealing to us that have any sort of traditional leanings. But when we look at mass political psychosis, I mean, psychosis is the inability to distinguish, again, reality from fantasy, and the inability to actually perceive actual threats. And so we're seeing a massive amount of people in this country with the inability to actually perceive who the threats are. We're seeing crime all over the place. Again, related to something that I've been looking at is the development of training camps here in the United States that various, specifically Muslims, I was talking with one of my premium members, and there's one there in Tennessee that is about 100 acres, and they're doing military drills and such. And yet the threat are Trump supporters. The threat is MAGA. The threat is white supremacy. This is psychotic. When we look at, various crimes that have been committed against certain groups of people, and the explanation is, oh, well, we can't look at it through a certain spectrum of color or anything like this because that would be racist. And so therefore, we don't need to evoke justice in certain degrees, right? And so you look at everybody calling everybody Nazis, and this is also on the rise now. It's something I talked about last night with Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. Certainly there's a growing split within the conservative party or conservative movement, however you want to describe what that thing is. Obviously, many people have different definitions of what it is. But even Charlie Kirk today started to highlight who actually owns many of the NGOs and many of the groups that have promoted like anti-white racism. Now, that is an ability to accurately describe some of the actual threats that are facing us. But that seems to be incapable to be seen by a vast swath of the American populace. Furries, again, when I show you some of these videos, you're not going to believe what people are doing. And historically, these people would have been identified as, hey, you have a mental illness. You have a problem. We need to talk to you. You need to, again, be relegated into a sort of confine. And so in like an adverse understanding, historically, mental institutes were a way to relegate insane people or people with significant mental illness into a place in which they can actually be helped and treated, and they can't harm other people. If anything, they can only harm themselves. But now, since we've seen the deinstitutionalization of the Western world, because this is a phenomenon all across European nations and, of course, America and Canada, that now they're out on the streets, they're out on the loose. And we look at the elites of our countries, and then they live in gated communities. They live in the exclusion, right? It's almost like the inverse, that we then are living in an insane asylum. Our culture, our societies are becoming insane, and they're filled with insane people. And meanwhile, those that are allowing to happen, just like we just saw with Governor Newsom of California. I've been to San Francisco. I lived in Berkeley for multiple years, and it was filthy. There were syringes everywhere. There's literally an app for when you go to San Francisco to avoid human feces. And within a matter of a day or two, he's able to clean up the entire city, demonstrating that the government, if they really wanted to clean things up, they could, but they don't, and they don't want to. And I think that's all deliberate, obviously. And so as they then make our societies more violent, less safe, well, they themselves can be relegated back into their exclusive neighborhoods and homes, of which is we're seeing a major divide in wealth, which is escalating this process. So I argue that social media is in fact spreading the contagion. Social media, propaganda, fake news, all this different stuff is real, and it's actually affecting the mental health of people, and it's leading people into a psychotic state of mind. Those who are truly persecuted are ignorant of the actual persecution. We just saw, I don't know if you guys saw today, that the J6 tapes were released. And what happened? We saw that those J6 protesters were led in by the police. They were nonviolent. They were actually formally respectful, fairly respectful, and they were having conversations with the police in the tapes. Yet we were told this was an event equivalent to 9/11, an inability to see reality, an inability to actually perceive threats. And I just did a stream again last night talking about Douglas Mackey, who's being sent to federal prison for a meme of Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential election. Those are real threats. The government is a real threat to a certain group of people within the United States, and yet the opposing group are the ones that are living in terror, afraid that they are the ones that are going to be the victims of violent crime, or again, the clampdown. If Trump was to get president, we're going to turn into the Third Reich. This is insanity. And so I want to lead you through, again, various articles and videos today to try to discuss this. But I think what we're witnessing is a incredible, again, breakdown in mental health. And Christ is the one that saves us. And I speak for myself, but I'm sure that many people would agree that as we become more Christian, as we become closer to Christ, I know myself, I've never been more sure of who I am. I was, again, throwing away a bunch of clothes the other day and going through my, again, closet, stuff that's been there forever. And I'm seeing stuff that I used to wear, stuff that, old stuff. And it began forced me to begin to think about how I kept wanting to, again, these are like large Jordan t-shirts and stuff like this. And thinking about who I thought I was or who I wanted to be back in high school, and how I'm so different now, but now I found who I am. And I think this is related to, again, our relationship with Christ and God. And as we get closer to Christ, we can see things more clearly and more clearly and more clearly, because that's what he does. He heals the blind, and you and I are blind. And we need him to, again, rub his spittle and dirt into our eyes so that we can have eyes to see and ears to hear. And so as our country's losing Christ, as our country's losing its Christian faith, it's hard not to notice the tremendous ramp up in insanity. I just want to show you stuff that has been trending on social media. Here are a couple people who are minorly part of the furry community. You can see the dog collar around this woman, and just see how they interact here.
I forget you, bitch. No. Yes. No. Yes.
Okay, we're gonna stop it there. But I got more. Check this one out. This is of a recent
What's
video
going on?
of a woman who gets pulled over. She is drunk driving, and you tell me if you think this woman is sane or not.
Nothing.
Why are you driving in the wrong way of traffic?
No, I just got changed around. I just moved here like 2 months ago.
Okay.
I just got changed around.
Okay. Do you understand what's going on, though?
Yes.
You're going into oncoming traffic.
I know, and I just decided that it was better just to turn around and be like, quick.
Okay.
But I'm sorry. I just have like really bad social anxiety and stuff.
I get you.
I don't want to step out whenever you're asking for stuff.
Okay. Well, we're past that. Just go ahead and step out.
As an Indigenous person, and
Right back, please. Miss Perry?
well, I'm non-binary, so
Okay. What do you go by?
it's Kai.
How can I refer to you tonight? Kai? Okay. Hey, I'm smelling alcohol.
No,
How much have you consumed tonight?
like probably through Jane.
I need to run you through some tests right now. Stand facing me, please.
But I just want you to know that I also have very bad social anxiety.
You and me both.
Okay.
Okay. Any recent head trauma, traumatic brain injuries, anything I need to know about?
Mental, yes.
Focus on my finger, please.
I am. You're just like trying to intimidate me.
I don't know how I'm trying to do that. This is the test.
As you know, as an Indigenous person, and there's a bunch of going around, I'm sorry, but it's just for me to be on my toes.
I get you.
Can you remember that I told you that I'm non-binary?
Yeah, I'll try my hardest. I'll refer to you as Kai, right?
Yes.
Perfect. I need to know if you have any injuries or anything that would prevent you from doing a standard walk or turn tonight.
Mental health.
Any physical injuries?
Mental, yeah. But no, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Mental, PTSD, depression, anxiety.
I get you.
What else do you want?
Now, with your right foot, place it in front of your left in a heel-to-toe touching manner with your arms by your side, just like this, ma'am.
Can you not call me ma'am, please?
I'm trying my hardest.
Okay, well,
Okay.
it means a lot to me.
I'm trying my
I don't
hardest.
feel like a man, so
Okay.
it's kind of triggering.
Right foot in front of your left. Nope. Go back.
I'm sorry, but the whole man thing, just like,
I apologize. Let's see if we can move forward from it. You have 0 questions?
no, but I just want to tell you that I suffer from really bad anxiety, especially with generational trauma and PTSD around white people. And
This white girl says she has PTSD and trauma from being around white people. Again, what did I talk about? Psychosis. We're going to look into the definitions here in a second. It's the inability to accurately perceive threats, living in a fantasy, unable to actually distinguish what's real from what is perceived in a sort of fictitious manner. This is mentally insane.
thoughts, like, it's just,
I'm going to speak with you right over here, okay?
no,
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and place your hands behind your back.
don't, dude.
Don't make it hard.
Please.
Don't make it hard.
No,
No. You're going to get a resistance.
dude,
You're going to get a
I
resistance. Okay?
don't.
Don't resist.
Don't.
Listen to me. Don't resist.
Don't. You're being
Come
a
here.
white man and
Come here.
don't. I followed all of your shit. Like, as an Indigenous person, like, you guys. You guys are scaring me.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes, there is. It's going.
So that's just again one instance. We got multiple videos to check out here, but I see we got a super chat I want to address. Shout out to my sister, Slow Boy Whiteboard. She says, saying we live in an insane asylum. Let me pull it up real quick. Shout out to Slow Boy Whiteboard. God bless you, Kristen, you and your family. Hope you guys are doing well. She says, saying we live in an insane asylum is actually backwards in its true meaning. We need asylum from the insane running the streets in the world. Yeah, that's actually, yeah, I agree with you. I actually agree with you. We need asylum from it. But it seems like the elites have chosen asylum from the rest of us. And so in a way, we have been put and relegated into the insane ward. It sure feels like it. But great point. Great point, Kristen. Thank you very, very much for that. And we got a couple super chats over on the Dono chat. So if anybody wants to support, feel free to use Dono chat or Streamlabs. Over on Dono chat, we have a $5 super chat by Joe Biden Werewolf. He says, have you ever seen the Neon Genesis Evangelion, and would you consider doing a live stream on it? No, I'm not familiar with that, but I can look it up later tonight, Joe Biden Werewolf. Thank you for that. I'll look into it, and maybe I will do a live stream on it. I'm just not familiar with it. And then Bond Jovi 1912, thank you so much, throws in a generous $50 super chat and says, I'm living in a small town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. I've been there. And the city started busing in homeless folks, and it's a sad state of affairs. Yeah. And unfortunately, Asheville, North Carolina is also incredibly liberal in the sense that it's like a new age haven. When I was there, you know, there was like tons of sort of new age spirituality and shops to go into and stuff like that. So again, it makes sense why, unfortunately, a beautiful state like North Carolina is being, again, infiltrated by insanity, if you will. Unfortunate. And then we got $1 sent in by the Dr. Vagisil. Let me pull this down. He throws in $1 over on the Streamlabs and says, the logismi keep attacking, but without godly humbleness, you don't have the strength to win. That is true. That is absolutely true. And if you are under a real demonic attack, I mean, without an understanding of transcendence, or at least a God to orient yourself towards, it's going to be hard to deal with that, I would argue. So, yeah, great point, Dr. Vagisil. I appreciate that. And again, we're seeing the same people that I would argue are certainly exhibiting forms of insanity are the same ones that would characterize you as being dumb and superstitious for believing in God or the resurrection or whatever it may be. So ironic, to say the least. Okay, back to what we got going here in regards to these videos. So check some of this stuff out, guys. Here's another one. This is an article, again, another thought-provoking article, is Zoophilia is Morally Permissible by Fira Benesto. It's a pseudonym, which is just out in the current issue of, again, this is an academic journal, supposed to be an academic journal of controversial ideas. Here, let me pull it up for you guys. And that's this right here, Journal of Controversial Ideas, an open access journal. Zoophilia is morally permissible. Here's the abstract of the article. As one of our most deeply entrenched social taboos, zoophilia is widely considered to be wrong, and having sex with animals is illegal in many countries. Yeah, rightfully so. And this article, I would like to go against this de facto consensus and argue that zoophilia is morally permissible. This would have major implications for how we legally and socially deal with zoophilia. Yeah, I'm going to say the person is insane. They can't even distinguish appropriate sexual partners without thinking that animals would be beneficial. Unreal. Here is the one that I wanted to show you guys in regards of this girl dressed as a pig. So check this out and let me know what you guys think about this.
My boyfriend just got home.
Do you think I'm beautiful?
Yes, I do.
Oh. Do you want some mud? It actually feels kind of nice.
No, I'm okay, actually.
Do you think I'm beautiful? Yes, I do. What? What did we just watch? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. The fact that this is growing phenomenon is worrisome. Here's a man that was recorded on the subway in New York who has an invisible baby that he is coddling and petting of some sort. This, again, this is right out in the open. This is a man on the subway. Making baby noises. Here is this video was going around, making its round around TikTok. We can actually go to this guy's channel. He is quite popular in the, here he is right here.
As a bird, I love to shake water out of a hamster water bottle because it can. As a bird, I love to shake water out of it.
Let's see, how big is his TikTok? I really want to know. Yeah, 587,000.4 followers, over 17.1 million likes. Check out this guy.
This is my first time going to FurryCon, and I am jumping with joy because there's going to be so many cute bakas there. There's also going to be so many other kittens there, and you guys know I get super territorial when I see other cute kittens because it's not fair. I need to be the cutest of them all. I'm also super excited because there's going to be so much free cat food and kitty treats, and you guys know I love to eat my kitty treats. And since I'm new to the furry world, I'm super excited to see all the other furries in their new fursuits. Oh, I'm going to act up so hard when I see all these cute furries. I'm just praying that my ex Baka doesn't go, because if he goes, oh, there's going to be a big kitten brawl. This FurryCon is all about love and peace. I want to have the best of time meeting all the other furries. Oh, I'm also super excited because this is going to be the first time I'm speaking on a panel in a room full of furries and other Bakas too. I'm quite nervous, but my mommy's giving me some catnip so I can calm down and not have high kitten anxiety when I'm speaking on my panel. I'm going to be doing a story time on the first Baka that I ever met and how he forever changed my life. I want to look like I'm already blushing when I'm talking to the other Bakas, so I want to use a lot of blood.
North of says, is it normal to feel sick to my stomach watching these people? Yes. Yes, it absolutely is. And so I apologize. If anybody is vomiting in their mouth, I apologize. But again, we're only going to watch a few of these, and then I want to move into some actual articles discussing the premise of, again, today's stream. But